Thanks for joining us. I'm Gianna Franco. We're still following the tsunami advisory that's in effect for the entire U.S. West Coast. This after an underwater volcano in the South Pacific exploded in a violent eruption. We want to show you some new video of that eruption right now. This satellite imagery shows the massive ash cloud and gas steam rising from the volcano. You can see that right there. Now, a tsunami has already hit Tonga's largest island, Tonga Tapu. Right now, it's unclear how much damage was done, but that video is incredible to see that. And let's look live right now outside here in the Bay Area, where that tsunami advisory is still in effect all along the northern California coast. If you're located in a coastal area, you're being asked to stay off the beach, out of harbors, and out of the marinas. Strong currents, hazardous to swimmers, boats, and coastal structures are possible. And in the past hour, we've learned that the Golden Gate National Park Service has closed all beaches and access points until further notice. I also want to show you some video. This was out of Tiburon, taken earlier this morning from our sports director's wife, Vern Glenn's wife, Nicole, and you can see the water there just kind of rising. She mentioned that this was nothing she's ever seen before in that area, and it came pretty quickly, and at one point you could actually see boats off in the distance just clanking and moving around in that video. We wanted to show you that again. That's from Tiburon earlier this morning. And here's some video also we have out of Santa Cruz. You can see major flooding near a marina down there as well. We're still looking at Tiburon. We're still looking at the water in that area, but now here's the video out of Santa Cruz. There's plenty of this posted on social. You can find that at KPIX TV, but flooding reported in that area, and you can see in that neighborhood area near a marina, there is a significant amount of water there in front of homes, near cars, flooding. This is the Santa Cruz area, and again, people out there just kind of observing what's going on. So we are continuing to stay on top of this situation. The tsunami advisory is still in effect, and we don't really have any word how long that advisory will continue. From speaking with experts earlier today, likely for several hours, and you can see that there with that flooding in the Santa Cruz area. So just be cautious and be aware that if you are headed out, to stay away from coastal areas or harbors or marinas because of that. We do know that there are closures in place, as we just mentioned, near beaches. There's closures near the Berkeley Marina as well. The road right in front of there is completely shut down also. So you're looking live now at Muir Beach. Closures are in effect until further notice. And again, this is due to the tsunami advisory along the Pacific West Coast, all the way from Oregon, all the way down to the California-Mexico border, and of course right here in the Bay Area. And we've been monitoring this for most of the morning to see if there is any significant damage, but as we showed you in video from Tiburon and in Santa Cruz, that there is some flooding, especially in the Santa Cruz area. We saw that in that video, and you're looking live right now just as we take and keep a close eye on what's going on our coastal areas and communities.
Coast on high alert tonight. A tsunami advisory triggered by an undersea volcanic eruption in the island nation of Tonga that's located in the Pacific Ocean. These satellite images on your screen show just how big that blast was, and 3 miles wide and 12 miles high. On the right, you can see the view of the ocean off the coast of Santa Cruz, with those waves coming in one after another there. Hawaii has already observed that tsunami with only minor flooding, but officials warn strong currents could persist. So here's the area under advisory in the red. It's on your screen. That includes the entire coastlines of California, Oregon, Washington, and Alaska. Tonga, which is north of New Zealand, experienced flooding and up to 4-foot waves. Here's video on the left. This video from New Zealand shows some of the waves rushing into the coastal town of Wellington. The big focal point, though, for us right now is the Central Coast, where many surfers and people at the beach have been evacuated and warned to stay away from the water.
There's a tsunami advisory in effect. Stay out of the water, off the beach, and away from the coast.
You heard it there. We saw the San Francisco Fire Department doing their sweeps. This is video of Pleasure Point in Monterey Bay, where surfers evacuated as the waves crashed right against the rocks trying to make it up those steps. The San Francisco firefighters had to rescue a surfer 300 feet off the coast of Kelly's Cove at Ocean Beach. This is video from the fire department of that. Rescue crews say the surge of waves were just so powerful that the surfer's board actually broke. The good news, though, right now is that surfer is safe. Take a look at these waves as well, crashing over the seawall. You can even hear its force. That car trying to drive through as those waves flood into the roadway. Some really crazy scenes there. And here you want to check out rough waters in Half Moon Bay. You can hear the wind as well. The Tsunami Warning Center says strong currents, a shoreline that has receded or is receding quickly, and unusual waves or sounds. Yeah, those are all signs that a tsunami is coming in. And finally, in the Santa Cruz Harbor, look at all of this water surging in, going all the way up to the pier there as well. This same area was also hit by a small tsunami wave back in 2011. That was after an earthquake had hit Japan. Now, with that in mind, KCRA went to Santa Cruz today to see the preparation underway for any potential tsunami damage there. KCRA 3's Aaron Heft is live on the coast in Santa Cruz. Aaron, we know the tsunami caused massive tides flooding the harbor there. Can you tell us the conditions that you're now seeing tonight?
Good evening, Brittany. This morning was chaos. Today, reminding people of the large tide that really hit this area hard back in 2011. People rushing to this very beach to see for themselves what would happen.
These cars are getting pushed around. I jumped on my bike and I just cruised down here to try and get a look at what was going on. And sure enough, the water was surging in.
That's Josh Hawley. And when he got to the Santa Cruz Harbor, this is what he saw.
Yeah, so I came out this morning once I heard that there was a tsunami alert, and thought it'd be, good to come to the harbor and see what was going on.
Emergency responders kicking him out. He says he's thankful, saying he'd be under this water if he stayed where he was. Hundreds of people coming to see what was happening.
Yeah, we figured we'd come down and see, what the surge might look like here. And
boat owners being kept off the docks for their safety. They say these river-like currents aren't normal.
So the docks were actually almost to the tops. They were almost locked.
Jason Colby said he was prepared to cut his boat loose if things took a turn.
You drop a rock in the pond and, the waves start big and then they eventually get small enough.
Locals saying the surge seemed 10 feet high.
For sure. Okay. The harbor flooded.
Hitting the waves daily south of the harbor, Matt and Tony say today's strange.
Yeah, as I came out, I was watching him and I was like, he's sideways in the current.
And so it wanted to throw me out past the jetty.
The area's major concerns, riptides and coastal flooding, with surges damaging docks, boats, and people not heeding warnings and staying out of the water and off the beach.
I just tried to walk down the stairs and get yelled at.
The ripple effect from over 5,300 miles away still pushing into California.
the beauty of Mother Nature and everything she gives us, and then there's the other side of her too,
Mother Nature, of course, being wild in nature. Obviously, you can see the ocean right now. People going into the ocean telling us today that these waves feel strange, they feel dangerous, the current's not normal. You can actually see onto the beach. This shoreline and the coast, this water just went so much farther up on this beach than average, they say today. Everyone's saying it felt strange, it felt dangerous. It's not a time to be out here, and that's what locals are saying. Brittany, back to you.
Aaron, I'm sure there was worry, but we heard some mixed reactions from folks out there as well. We know this area has seen extreme damage before from a similar tsunami. Can you explain what happened back then?
Oh yeah, the harbor that we just showed you in that last piece, that harbor had $120 million worth of damage. It took years and years to repair. 15 boats sank. 23 of the 30 docks actually had extensive damage, and those docks were repaired and replaced, and they were repaired to have and withstand waves that were 2 feet in surge length. Now, they did see larger surges than that today, but they're not reporting damage as of yet.
All right, Aaron, thank you so much. We do want to show you video of what Aaron was just explaining, so take a look here. This was back in 2011. You can see those waves coming in, crashing into boats. Yeah, it's a pretty shocking sight. An earthquake in Japan spawned a tsunami that crossed the Pacific and caused all of this damage to the Santa Cruz harbor. The new docks, as Aaron just told you, were built to withstand 2 feet waves. People we spoke to today said that tsunami felt like a river flowing in and out of the harbor.
I mean, if you've ever seen the video, you guys go on YouTube. This was a mess. There was boats going around. It looked basically like a, fish tank.
A fish tank is definitely a good way to describe it. So yeah, more than 100 boats there were damaged, plus 23 of the harbor's 30 docks as well. Let's talk about the impact we did see from the tsunami today, with Hawaii already seeing some of its biggest waves, Melanie.
Yeah, and I want to focus in on what exactly the tsunami advisory is, because we're still seeing some water levels a little bit higher than we typically expect. So tsunami advisory goes into place when we have peak wave heights that are expected to be 1 foot to 3 feet above our normal tide. So that's when we talk about high tide and low tide. And this is one of the plot charts that meteorologists are using to see the waves that we are seeing. So we have what we consider the predictive wave, that is shown in a blue line here. And then we also have the observed, which is shown in red. And typically we just have these lines that pretty much run parallel to each other. But when we started to see these tsunami waves, here's where you start to see these sharp rises and falls with the wave heights. And I just picked one of these observations. This is Point Reyes. Now, at times, the observed waves were about 1.5 feet higher than what we typically see. Some observations along the California coast were about 3 feet or higher, but those were mainly some isolated pockets. But I show you this now because while the water levels overall continue to decrease, we still have some sharp rises and falls, and typically we need to spend 3 hours with those rises that are under 1 foot before we can have this tsunami advisory expire. Brittany?
All right, Melanie, that's a really helpful breakdown. Thank you so much. Of course, we will continue to follow this tsunami advisory up and down the West Coast. For the very latest updates, you can always check out our KCRA 3 app.
From the CBS Bay Area studios, this is KPIX 5 News.
Right now on CBSN Bay Area, a tsunami advisory still in effect tonight for the entire U.S. West Coast. Is it posing a threat to the Bay Area?
And hundreds of East Bay residents heading back home tonight, while some say the evacuation was a big surprise.
Plus, we speak to an expert who says there is a possibility another eruption could occur. Thank you for joining us. I'm Juliette Goodrich.
And I'm Brian Hackney, looking live over the coast almost 24 hours after a blast detected around the world sent a tsunami racing toward the West Coast. The tsunami advisory is still in effect tonight. All this after an undersea volcano produced a blast so loud it was heard all the way to Alaska. And now at 6 o'clock tonight, people are still being cautioned to stay off the beaches as ripples in the ocean continue to wash up on shores from China to the United States. It all began at 8:27 p.m. Pacific time last night near the island kingdom of Tonga. An undersea volcano active for days suddenly blew sky high, sending a terrific plume of steam and ash 12,000 feet high and 3 miles wide. Water and small rocks rained out over the Tongan capital 40 miles away. With a tsunami strafing Tonga's largest island, even their king had to evacuate his palace. Many families from Tonga live in San Mateo County, and they have been utterly cut off from their loved ones back home. That blast happened around dinner time in Tonga, sending tsunami waves up and over the most populated islands. Images posted on Facebook show people being driven from their homes, and then nothing. Shortly after the eruption, internet service was abruptly cut off and remained so tonight. A Tongan pastor at a San Carlos church says that reports he got from family and friends were terrifying.
They said they never saw anything like that. It was like black rain coming down from the sky, and they found out later the little rocks. You can grab them from on top of your car and hold it. We still believe that something good is gonna come out, Yeah. And that's our prayer all night last night, that God will protect our little island, which we love so much.
Because communications are all shut down tonight, many Tongans say they are extremely worried because they haven't been able to reach their loved ones. About 100,000 people live on that island alone.
We have an update tonight. The tsunami advisory forcing more than 100 people to evacuate from the Berkeley Marina this morning. But that order was just lifted, according to Alameda County OES. But they are still warning people to use caution on boats and on docks. Now, earlier, KPIX5's Sean Chitness spoke to some of those who were asked to evacuate and learned more about why that particular spot had experts concerned about the potential impact.
Traffic is moving again here along University Avenue at the Berkeley Marina. Police closed off the street in the morning as that tsunami advisory was just beginning to make sure people were kept a safe distance away, as well as allow experts to study the waves along the shore. Just after 7 in the morning, residents at the marina got an earlier start to their Saturday than they planned.
They drove by with the patrol boats and also walked up and down the docks with loudspeakers telling us to evacuate immediately.
About 10% of the boats have people here who live on board. Berkeley police evacuated around 115 residents.
First time for everything.
Some have lived here for more than 20 years. They said the water was calmer today than other times when they were still able to stay in their boats.
Usually if there's a storm, you feel something. This is placid water.
To help residents ride out the tsunami advisory away from their homes, the American Red Cross came here with supplies and stayed on the marina while they waited to go back to their boats.
We're always here to help people in any kind of need, especially for the folks like here today in the Berkeley Marina if they need some assistance.
The California Geological Survey was on site observing the water to see what the impact might be. They noticed at least 3 surges in the waves, even making a subtle whirlpool in the water that visitors may not have noticed otherwise.
I've seen a couple boats try to come into the harbor like 3 or 4 times, and they just turn around and go back out because the currents are too strong.
Staff left without reporting any major issues, but the potential for damage to property and danger to people nearby required them to study the scene.
The Marina office called my husband and said that it was going to be several more hours before we were allowed back down onto the docks.
Reporting in Berkeley, Sean Chitness, KPIX 5.
And this just in, video of a surfer who had to be rescued tonight about 300 feet offshore at San Francisco's Ocean Beach. Park rangers say he's okay. He is being evaluated for non-life-threatening exposure to the cold water. Rescuers say the waves were so strong they broke apart his surfboard. And we got lots of new video showing big waves, not necessarily associated with the tsunami, because we did have high tides at the same time. Almost coincident with the arrival of the tsunami wave was high tide, so it's hard to tell the difference between the two, except for that video that Darren showed you. But along the Bay Area coastline today, video from the North Bay with waves hitting the Sonoma County coast. And video from Bodega Bay. You can even see a boat out there. Actually being outshore is fairly safe for a boat in a tsunami, but it was being tossed around by some of the waves. A lot of people watching all the waves slam against the coast, which is not a brilliant idea during a tsunami advisory. Here's some wild shots out of Pacifica. Waves crashing right over that seawall. The water spilling right onto the roadway, and you can see the car getting splashed as it goes by. Jules?
And Marin County also saw some minor flooding this morning. Streets were flooded near the Yellow Ferry Harbor in Sausalito. Police were at the dock. They were warning houseboat owners and pedestrians to be careful of the waves and to stay clear of the beaches, campgrounds, and low-lying areas. But some residents had this fear.
It was high tide at 9:30, so we're more concerned about those pilings. If it had been more water and if the docks could come up over the tops of those pilings. But as you can see, we got plenty of ways to go there.
And we're not the only ones feeling the effects of the tsunami. In fact, here is some new video out of Orange County tonight. Massive waves crashing along the Southern California shore. Deputies from Orange County PD were at the beach asking people to keep their distance from the water. In Redondo Beach, fishermen at the Redondo Harbor are being forced to keep their boats docked tonight as the tsunami advisory remains in effect for California.
I'd mentioned that this all happened totally coincidentally right at the time of high tide this morning in the Bay Area, and Darren's going to break that down for us. Darren.
We're going to go back to high tide, which was at 8:45 this morning, which it just happened to be the exact time the biggest wave energy from the tsunami got here. And I think this video probably drives home the point more than anything else we've seen today about how unexpected things can turn. That's Soquel Creek. The ocean is that way. In fact, this is just upstream from Capitola Beach. The beach is almost just out of view there. This is supposed to be a creek flowing that way, and this video was shot at 8:45 when, with high tide and the added surge of the tsunami, the creek started flowing backwards, upstream. So when we talk about unexpected things coming seemingly out of the blue, that drives the point home, I think, probably more than anything. Let me show you how this occurred. This is a way of gauging high tide in addition to wave energy. The blue line shows you what we know high tide was supposed to be today. The red line shows you what the wave heights actually were. Look at the convergence right there. The tsunami comes just at high tide at 9 o'clock this morning. That's why this was a problem. It's because the timing worked out just right. Here's why we're not done. The wave heights there are still exceeding the expected height by a foot. And that's the criteria for a tsunami advisory. We will be under a tsunami advisory until the wave heights dip below a foot higher than what the tide tell us it should be for 3 straight hours. And at this point, we're not even close to that. And high tide's coming back tonight at about 11:45. So we still have to watch this closely for the next several hours. That's why it says until further notice on the tsunami advisory. I'll see you with the rest of the forecast in a bit. Brian, back over to you.
Okay, thanks, Darren. New at 6, this tsunami advisory might have been something of a surprise to wake up to for a lot of us this morning. It was to me. I spoke with volcanologist Wendy Stovall today about just how far and wide the effects of the eruption and the tsunami really reached.
Fortunately, the volcano itself is relatively shallow, so the amount of water that was likely displaced during the eruption was not a huge amount. It is surprising that it reached the West Coast. The simple physics of it are really unlikely for anything like that to happen. But yes, it did reach the West Coast. The eruption was very powerful. There are reports that it was heard as far as Alaska. Wow. There were sensors that picked it up around the world. Not just seismic sensors, but sensors that measure sound that is inaudible to the human ear.
Wendy did mention there is always the possibility there could be a big or bigger eruption from the same source. That would be bad news for Tonga, but the West Coast at least would have 11 hours of warning before any subsequent tsunami.